so I think when everyone tackles a motion project, it seems quite daunting because you're going to think like as Joel said, like it's got massive production to it, even though it's not overly, it is expensive, but not as expensive as live action, but it's quite a thing to put together. But I kind of want to put your minds at ease that not everything has to be a feature-length Pixar film or a John Lewis ad. Sometimes stuff can be rather simple. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, I would say aim small. Next slide. Or rather short. So what I'm going to be chatting about today briefly is, so you can go to the next slide, Ben, is short motion in social media. So throughout, especially in marketing and advertising, keeping your motion and your animation short, sorry, I might want to put my phone on silent, it's quite, especially on social media, is quite important. So if you go to the next slide, I should have actually just done like one slide, but yeah, why keep it short? You're actually, if you're on social, you're competing with family members because they're on social media. You're competing with actual Pixar. You're competing with other brands, and you just completely lose your audience. So if you keep it really short and punchy, you catch the attention of your message much quicker, and you get the message across instead of doing like a whole 1 minute. I remember back in advertising, we kept having to scale our efforts down. So we will go in with a 2 minute and we'll go like, okay, that's too long. Make it 1 minute. Media will come back and go like, no, it needs to fit into 15 seconds. You need to grab your audience within like 5 to 10 seconds actually. And at the end, you have your call to action. So you can go to the next slide, Ben. Yeah, so it brings me to this little story. If you're from South Africa, you will recognize this brand. It's a Cadbury chocolate called PS. And they've been around for ages, basically as long as I can remember. And their thing is they have little messages on them. So you can see here, this is a modernized version. They'll say like, I'm sorry, happy birthday, I love you. And this is the modern version, be my bae and besties. So what they've done was they actually relaunched their packaging completely. And they wanted to digitize it, which was an interesting next step. So they tasked us to come up with, cool, this is the packaging. What do we do with it? How do we engage an audience? That's on social media right now. So if you go to the next slide, and the next one, what we actually did was we paired the chocolates to digital cards or animations. So if you go next slide, and then what that was, the client basically wanted us to then come up with content for an entire year for every chocolate that you buy, so that every day when you scan it, there's something new. And that's quite the endeavor. That's a lot of content. So we kind of need to figure out like, okay, cool. How do we do 365 days worth of content within the budget? And it needs to kind of fit in with every single message. And we can't have long lead times and so yeah, this is where process was very, very important. So we basically started at the storyboard phase. We plotted everything out. We plotted out all the messages, all the types of animation and motion that we wanted to use. And we specifically didn't want to go one style because it's so much content. If we went like, cool, we're going to go 2D, this style, and that's all we're going to do. And we're going to create 150 pieces of content. That's just that. It could get tired quite quickly. And our audience is also quite vast. So we wanted to kind of switch it up. So if you see here, this is 2D. And if you go to the next slide, we actually did some live action and we did some 3D and we shot in studio. We really did like a broad mix of stuff. So if you go next slide. Yeah, so we created lots of content. It was at the end of the day, we did 150 pieces of content. So that was a new content piece every second day that we had to keep going for an entire year.
It's amazing though. It's super cool. It's really cool. I mean, I think to have those personalized chocolates with those messages, I mean, I could almost, I mean, I guess you should tell us, like, did it kind of go viral? Like, what was the impact of this campaign?
Yeah, so if you go next slide, I think, yeah, so as I said, 365 days covered, and then next slide, we got 1 million views. We got over 1 million views on the content, so it did very well. So if I compared that to traditional brands or the competitors, or even within Cadbury, where we will do one, like maybe a certain chocolate brand has a bigger budget, and they would go, cool, make me a TV ad. It needs to be a minute. It's going to fly it on TV, and we're going to do cut downs on social media. That doesn't last very long. A campaign like that lasts like 2-3 months. And then your budget is spent because it's expensive to shoot. It's expensive to fly it on TV. So we really stretched the client's budget. We got 1 million views. It lasted an entire year. Their content for their packaging that was linked to it, their content for their social media, all of their platforms was pretty much sorted for 365 days.
Nice.
Yeah, so it did really well. And they're actually still running it now. They're making changes to it every year.
Oh, wow. Great. Anneke, do you have insight into whether that had direct impact on sales?
Goodness, yeah, I get asked that one a lot. I think it did, but the thing is, it's a difficult one because we don't have an online shop, so you can't buy online, so it's hard to measure conversion like that. But there was an uptake, but also remember there was a packaging change, so it's hard to know if it was the campaign or if it was the packaging. All of it together, yes, there was an uplift, but it's hard to know what did the job exactly. I'm sure it was a combination of all of it.
Yeah, but I think either way, it really served the purpose of, raising brand awareness too, and driving great connections with customers out there with that many views.
Brand campaigns are funny things. I never get them. Like, they're also always like, awareness. We need like mass awareness. Like, but to what end? Like, what do you want? Like, what are the KPIs? At the end of the day, it is to move product. So 100% get you there. Yeah, I was just going to say key learnings from this was to have a really tight creative brief. So, of course, there's a client brief. From that, we had our creative brief, meaning like, what is the messages? We conceptualized around all of them. We conceptualized the type of animation, as I said before, and then probably the most important thing, because it's so quick turnaround and we had to do content every second day, we needed client buy-in up front. So we kind of had them buy into this big master plan, going like, this is what we're going to do. And then they signed that off, and then we ran quite quickly. At the beginning, it was slow, and then it just like picked up speed, and it was quite seamless at the end.